The first time the pill stopped working quite as well as it used to, I assumed it was a fluke. By the third time, I knew for certain it wasn't. I'm 83, and once I understood why, I started doing one simple thing every morning. Men who drink coffee regularly have shown a measurably lower rate of this exact problem in population studies. Not a cure, but a real, documented association nobody ever mentioned to me. For a while, I just accepted the decline. Didn't bring it up with my doctor, embarrassed like it was my own fault. I remember counting in my head how many times in a row it had happened, like I was keeping score against myself. You've probably felt that exact moment. Something that used to be dependable stops being dependable, and instead of asking why, you just quietly lower your expectations. In a minute, I'll show you the morning habit that actually addresses this, and why it isn't what you'd expect. Here's what nobody explained to me. That pill was never designed to fix circulation directly. It works on a nerve signal pathway, amplifying a response that's already trying to happen. But an erection depends on three systems working together: the hormonal piece, the nervous system signal, and blood flow, governed by a molecule called nitric oxide that tells your arteries to relax and let blood in. If circulation has weakened over the years, the pill has less and less to amplify. It wasn't betraying me. The foundation underneath it had quietly eroded, and understanding that took away a decade of quietly blaming myself for something that was never really about willpower. I think about how differently I would have handled those years if a doctor had simply said this out loud, in plain language, the first time the pill started slipping. Instead, I filled the silence myself with the worst possible explanation, that something was fundamentally wrong with me, when the real explanation was just ordinary physiology, the kind that responds to support the same way any other system in the body does. These days, I have more energy in the morning than I did when this started slipping. I get up ready to move instead of needing half an hour just to feel like myself. I actually look forward to mornings again, which sounds like such a small thing until you remember how many years I spent dreading them. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because the morning habit I'm about to describe is exactly why that changed. Here's the part that reframed everything. The blood vessels involved here are some of the smallest in your entire circulatory system, smaller than the ones feeding your heart. So when circulation weakens anywhere, this is often where it shows up first. And if a medication that used to work suddenly doesn't, that's worth bringing straight to your doctor, since researchers who study this treat it as a meaningful signal. For 3 years, I slept 3 feet away from my wife, and it felt like 300 miles. She'd fall asleep first. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, wide awake, feeling like a roommate in my own marriage. I thought something was wrong with me. It wasn't weakness, and it wasn't just age. Here's what no one ever sits a man down to explain. This isn't about willpower. It's about specific systems in your body quietly losing steam year after year, while nobody tells you it's even happening. The pills my doctor handed me gave me headaches, made my chest feel tight, and honestly, they made me feel like I needed a pill just to feel like a man. I wasn't willing to live like that. There's a gentler way to bring those systems back, without any of that. At 83, my wife and I aren't roommates anymore. I'll show you exactly what changed it in this video, and if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. So here's the morning habit itself, and I know it sounds almost too ordinary to matter. A real cup of coffee, in moderation, most mornings. Here's why it caught my attention. There's a large population study out of the United States that looked at men's caffeine intake and found that those who consumed a moderate amount of caffeine daily, roughly the equivalent of 2 to 3 cups of coffee, had a meaningfully lower likelihood of reporting erectile difficulty than men who consumed very little or none. It's an observational study, not a controlled trial on any one man, and I want to be honest with you about that. But the proposed mechanism makes sense. Caffeine is thought to help relax the smooth muscle in the arteries and improve blood flow, which circles right back to that same nitric oxide pathway I mentioned. I want to be clear that this isn't a green light to drink coffee all day long. Moderation is the whole point, and too much caffeine brings its own problems, especially for sleep and for some heart conditions. But a real cup or two in the morning, instead of skipping it entirely or overdoing it with 4 or 5, became one small, ordinary piece of my morning that I never would have connected to this otherwise. What surprised me most was learning that timing matters just as much as amount. A cup in the morning, well ahead of any evening wind-down, works with your body's rhythm instead of against it. Caffeine has a longer half-life than most people realize, which means the same cup that helps in the morning can quietly undermine your sleep if you have it too late in the day, and sleep is exactly the thing this whole system depends on overnight. I added the rest of the routine around it. Vegetables rich in dietary nitrate, supporting nitric oxide further. A short walk most mornings, which supports the hormonal rhythm tied to your internal clock. I tightened up my sleep, since hormone production happens mostly overnight. I cut back on alcohol. None of these pieces alone would have done much on its own. It was the combination, sustained for a couple of months, that actually moved the needle. My wife and I took a weekend trip not long ago, and for the first time in longer than I want to admit, I wasn't quietly calculating in the back of my mind whether things would work the way they used to. I was just present, the way you should be able to be at any age. We even joked about the fact that I'd finally become the one waking up early and making the coffee instead of her. I think about a man named Raymond who wrote in after one of these videos, 79, on blood pressure medication for over a decade, whose prescription had stopped working well about 2 years before he reached out. He said adding this small morning habit, something concrete, something he could actually do himself before breakfast every day, gave him something to act on instead of just accepting the decline as final. He told me the fact that it was something so ordinary, something already part of his day, made it far easier to actually stick with than anything more complicated ever had. Raymond also mentioned something that stayed with me. He'd nearly canceled his next doctor's appointment altogether, assuming there was nothing left to discuss once the pill stopped working. Understanding the actual mechanism was what got him to keep that appointment and finally bring the change up directly, instead of just quietly enduring it. If you're on medication for blood pressure or your heart, please hear this clearly. This habit doesn't replace your prescription, and you should never stop or change a medication on your own. If your pill has stopped working as well as it used to, that's worth a direct conversation with your doctor. It's exactly the kind of change he needs to know about. And if you have any heart condition where caffeine is a concern, that's a conversation for your doctor too, not something to decide on your own from a video. What I want you to walk away with is this. When a medication stops working the way it used to, that's not necessarily the medication failing. It's often the circulation underneath it quietly needing support of its own. And sometimes that support is something as ordinary as the cup already sitting on your kitchen counter. I wish someone had told me this a decade earlier, before all that private scorekeeping, before I'd built an entire quiet narrative around a decline that had a real, ordinary, addressable cause the whole time. Your erections don't disappear just because you got older. They fade when the systems behind them, blood flow, nitric oxide, hormones, energy, and recovery, slowly stop getting the support they need. Ignore that long enough, and it becomes harder to reverse. That's why I take this concentrated formula every morning. Not one ingredient trying to fix everything, but several working together to support circulation, energy, and drive from the inside out. It's a natural, doctor-backed protocol designed to support pathways your body already knows how to use. No prescription, nothing artificial. Stronger, present, confident again. And unlike the pills I tried, I didn't feel disconnected from my own body. No headaches, just steady, gradual change. My wife noticed before I even said a word. The presentation is linked right below this video. It won't replace your doctor or a healthy lifestyle. It's simply there to support your body. At 83, my wife and I aren't roommates anymore, and it's not too late for you. I think about the man I was, quietly accepting decline as final, embarrassed to even bring it up. And I think about the man I am now, 83, who found something small and consistent to actually do about it every single morning. That's not vanity. That's dignity. Being the man who's still in command of his own body, instead of the man who's just along for whatever happens next. If your pill ever stopped working the way it used to, tell me about it in the comments below. I'd genuinely like to know how many of us went through that exact same quiet, private decline. And if a simple morning routine like this one sounds doable to you too, go ahead and subscribe. There's more of this ahead, every single week, and I read every comment personally.